Good afternoon. It's your celebration station.
This is Ayla Barmmer.
Hi, Ayla. I've been expecting your call. Thanks so much for taking the time today to speak to me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Ayla, I know that you are a registered dietitian. Tell me your full title.
My name is Ayla Barmmer. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist with a master's degree in health communications. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, herbalist, and founder of FullWell.
Wow. Okay. So how did you come to specialize in this area? I mean, it sounds fascinating, sounds very interesting. What was the driving force behind you pursuing this kind of career?
Yeah, so fertility wasn't a common area of work when I started, especially in my field, but more so now given the degree to which nutrition and lifestyle really impact fertility. And my work with couples in the fertility space evolved over years in private practice and was really due to a need that I saw in my community that I came to learn was reflective of a much larger need in our country. And when I was working with women struggling to conceive or with pregnancy loss, I realized that based on the research and honestly just a good amount of my own intuition, I knew that there was more that I could do and it had to involve men too. So in my private practice, I began requiring that both partners work with me in order to get the best outcomes. And ultimately, after working with so many couples, I realized I had really empowering information and protocols that I needed to get out to a larger audience. And that's when FullWell, my third baby, I like to say, was born out of a need to get evidence-based products and educations to families and health practitioners.
Okay, so this topic hits near and dear to my heart, I will say, because I just recently got married 2 years ago. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm 36, so I'm a little bit up there. And we're trying to conceive, and it hasn't happened yet. And I'm really interested to learn what both male and female can do in helping the fertility process. So is infertility primarily a male or a female problem?
Great question. I mean, this may be surprising for listeners to hear because infertility is generally viewed as a women's health issue, and women bear that burden. But in reality, it's equally both. So to put that into perspective with some statistics, about 30% of infertility issues are due primarily to female factors, 30% due to male factors, and then the remaining 40% is categorized as the most frustrating diagnosis of all, unexplained infertility. And that tends to mean a combination of both male and female factors. So it truly is a shared issue, despite the fact that men are often left out of the equation, or at best, they're really simply viewed as having one role, fertilization. And in reality, men's health affects the health of the pregnancy and baby's long-term health. So regardless of whether or not a couple is struggling to conceive or gets to that point, what men do pre-conception affects the health of the pregnancy in a number of ways and affects baby's long-term health. So it's really important.
Does age matter for men like it does for women?
Yeah, so I know you mentioned, just a few minutes ago that, the kind of concern with age. And that's what gets talked about quite a bit, especially in the conventional medical setting. And it feels like this, the age-old, saying about the ticking clock, right? But really, age does matter. I've got some positive news, though. It matters for women, and it also matters for men to some degree. But because men do become more at risk for fertility issues as they age, and there can be consequences for both the health of the pregnancy and the baby. But it is really less about the number and the actual age and more about the cumulative effect of stressors on the body that happens over time as we age. So I think about it this way. So the strategy becomes really minimizing and compensating for those stressors. And I don't just mean stress like in the classical sense. It's also things like nutrient deficiencies and the stress that causes on the body and how it operates, lifestyle choices, environmental exposures like pollution, for example, or certain workplace things, personal care products. So there are absolutely things that are out of our control, but what we put into our body and many of our lifestyle choices are largely in our control, and they can, in a sense, reverse the clock. So that's the good news.
Okay, that is good news. So when I went and saw my midwife, She did the routine checkup, checking my blood. Hormone levels were a little bit out of whack. My testosterone was a little bit high. And so she diagnosed me with a subtype of polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And then so she prescribed metformin for insulin resistance and then also progesterone because I did get pregnant, but I had my period as normal and, the baby didn't attach. So with this topic of insulin resistance and the impact of diet and nutrition for a woman as well as a man, what can we do to kind of address that without resorting to medication?
Yeah, well, first of all, I am sorry. I'm sorry to hear that you went through that. It is something that I, very similar situations and stories and clients I've worked with in my practice over the years. And really, diet and lifestyle can have a huge impact, and you can manage a lot of this through that. And so one of the ways I like to explain it is our metabolism, which involves our blood sugar regulation, that talks to our reproductive system. They're reciprocally regulated, so they talk to each other, really. And when one is kind of down-regulated or up-regulated, turned up or down, then it's going to affect the other. And so one thing that's very, very common is blood sugar dysregulation. For both women and men, that can have an effect on reproductive health, both on hormone production and also for women on ovulation and healthy ovulation, because all of our ovaries actually have insulin receptors on them. That's kind of interesting. I could go down rabbit holes here. I'll try to spare you from that because I get really excited about
I'm totally interested in it. I love it. I love all the knowledge you want to share. So please.
Okay, great. So yeah, there's so many ways in which blood sugar dysregulation negatively impacts fertility. But on the flip side, if we can kind of get ourselves off of what I call like the blood sugar roller coaster and increase insulin sensitivity, which is possible, then that can have a really positive impact on fertility. So in my practice, what that really looked like over the years is a combination of strategies. So number one, it's like balance. It's really balancing out your meals with an emphasis on protein and produce. That's what I always like to say. So really having that first, and then focusing in on more complex, harder to digest whole grains, carbohydrates, things like that, and even your starchy vegetables. So that's one strategy. The other is to make sure that your nutrient levels are in a really good place. So it's where smart daily supplementation can really come in and help you fill in the gaps and help support optimal function, of your body. So blood sugar regulation actually requires really every system in our body, down to hormone production to like I said, blood sugar regulation. It actually requires nutrients, vitamins and minerals. And so it's really important to make sure that your vitamin and mineral status is good and, that's assessed, and that you are in this stage of life considering taking a prenatal multivitamin that's high quality. For men, that a counterpart to the prenatal, FullWell has our Vitality and Virility supplement, which is designed to do just that. So those things can really help with metabolism, and there's a lot of other things that can too, but that's a great foundation to start with.
We talked a little bit about diet, supplementation. What about exercise, some other things that maybe men and women can do?
Yeah, so for both women and men, it's really important to exercise routinely. I know we're told that all of the time, but I like to describe it as, exercise, any type of physical movement, right? Physical activity is going to help pump fresh, oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood through our body. And when it comes to reproductive health and hormones, that is really important because our brain needs to talk to our reproductive organs, and it does that largely through signaling, partially through the blood. So that really helps for that piece. And the other thing that we want to really focus on too is for both women and men is flooding the body with the right stuff to combat the things that we can't control, like what we said before, age or maybe certain environmental exposures. So a diet really high and rich in antioxidants and omega-3 fatty acids will serve both men and women really well. So think fruits, vegetables, seafood, including shellfish. Like if I'm in the Boston area, so it's a little easier. But, if couples can get out for like oysters and share those together, they are just full of all sorts of fertility supporting nutrients for both men and women, including zinc and selenium. So I always like to recommend that as something you can do together.
Now, what about the things to avoid?
Yes, so there's a few things to avoid. Number one, chemical and heavy metal exposure. This might seem pretty obvious, right? None of us really want to be exposed to that. However, the reality is that we're exposed to more environmental chemicals and pollutants today than in any other time in history. And so to make this not overwhelming, what I've always recommended to couples that I work with are big bang for your buck type things to focus on. So to reduce your toxin exposure. So one, swapping out fragrance products as much as possible, which have known hormone disrupting chemicals in them, like phthalates, and switching those out with more natural options. So think those air fresheners, like the wall plugins, the car air fresheners, stitching those all together if you can, or if you have something that's made with just essential oils, that can be a good option. Number two, alcohol. So this one is never popular, but I'm not saying it actually has to go entirely for men. Obviously in pregnancy it does for women, but if men want to think about their partner who won't be drinking throughout a pregnancy, I think, that puts it into perspective in terms of asking them to avoid or greatly reduce their alcohol intake for at least this 3-month window. That's a really critical window for both women and men, because that's when sperm and follicle-containing eggs are really developing and maturing. And that means, if we can kind of take that straw off the camel's back, so to speak, that will help mean healthier sperm, healthier egg quality, healthier pregnancies, and ultimately healthier babies. And then lastly, smoking. Particularly cigarettes. The thing about sperm, also eggs, but actually sperm in particular, is that they're very sensitive to what's called oxidative stress. And cigarette smoking generates a lot of that. So quitting smoking is going to have a really hugely positive impact.
Thinking of oxidative stress, I'm sure there's a lot of foods that we eat in the normal American diet that causes a lot of oxidative stress as well. Any particular ones that are absolutely avoid?
Yeah. It is true. And I would say, even though we're seeing less of it in the food supply because it's becoming more regulated, since we know how negative of an impact it has on our health, but trans fats, that's a class of man-made fats that are really particularly stressful on the body and produce a lot of oxidative stress. I think, in that time where you're considering trying to conceive, it's a really good opportunity to be trying to cook at home, as much as you can.
Yeah.
Things like frozen produce, those can be, there are convenience items that can make that easier. But as soon as you kind of get into eating out, particularly fast food, that's going to have, it's not only the food itself and the type of oils that are used, but, there's been some recent research showing that there's contaminants and things like some fast food, like microplastics and things like that. And those are the things, heating your food in plastic, getting takeout in like hot plastic containers. That's another kind of big bang for your buck kind of thing to try to avoid, because that comes in on your food supply and has hormone disrupting chemicals in it.
Right. And I know even trying to go organic if possible, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, knowing what those are as far as fruits and vegetables go, because a lot of the herbicides and pesticides, those things are also hormone disrupting. So I've been doing my research a little bit and trying to really dial in the nutrition aspect.
Yeah, and it can be overwhelming, and I'm not sure if you can speak to that personally, but I think it can be real. In my experience working with so many people over the years, I know it's like where to start, right? There's so many recommendations. There's so much to potentially change. And I really think that there's, the way that I've always started with the couples I work with is like, what are the things that are most frequent in your routine, most frequent in your life? What's going to have the biggest impact? If there's like a fragrance body lotion you're using every day, that might be one of the swaps you make. If you have some produce that you absolutely love and you're eating regularly, making that switch to organic with that one first, that can really help. So trying to make it doable. And FullWell, we have the Knowledge Well, which is a ton of educational resources just for free that we offer, and it's really pulled from my practice work over the past 15 years.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to looking at some of that information that you have there. So thank you for that. Okay, one of the things that I've been doing is talking to my husband about this and, the desire to have a baby. And, we're trusting God with his timing and believing, but we also have a part to play in it. And sometimes having those conversations can be a little bit difficult, and I don't want to nag. What do you think would be the best way for women to approach this conversation about fertility with their spouse?
Yes, and we have a blog post series coming out really soon on this topic with actual conversation starters, to help make that even easier. So I'm very excited about that series. It's such a good question because I think there's a general feeling that men won't be able to handle talking about their fertility health, particularly their sperm health, right?
Yeah.
And I actually think we're doing men a huge disservice by assuming that largely. The reality is men don't know, that their health and lifestyle choices go beyond fertilization and can help reduce pregnancy complications like pregnancy loss, preeclampsia, preterm birth. That's because we simply are not educating on that. But it does. Their health affects babies' long-term health. So, and again, they don't know because we don't talk about it. I think that women can approach their partners with empowering information and men will step up. We have to, again, we have a number of blog posts on this. But I think if you present it as, I just learned, did you realize, because I didn't realize, that the things that you're doing in this window of time will actually affect the risks of the pregnancy and it will affect baby's long-term health. And you can actually take a few simple steps to make a really big difference. What do you think would be doable for us to do? Or do any of these recipes, like we have some that we've curated, do these look good to you? So kind of approaching it from a positive angle and providing some choice too.
You're coming out with the blog post. Will that be at the same website, the FullWell fertility.com?
Yes.
So what else can we find at your website?
Yes, so FullWell is a fertility, wellness, and education brand, and we have a number of products. We've got one launching next week, which I'm very excited about. It's been a long time coming. These products are they're really started as an adjunct to my clinical practice. I'm a health practitioner first, but I really wanted to get behind the curtain, of the supplement industry and have full control over the quality process and the manufacturing process so that I understood it was up to the level that I would want to take and I'd want to recommend to my patients. And so that's really why I started this. And so we have a prenatal multivitamin that's award-winning. We have our Vitality and Virility men's counterpart to that, Nourish Nerves, which is safe nervous system support during pregnancy and breastfeeding and even preconception, because we know how stressful trying to conceive can be in that time frame. And we're coming out with our really high quality fish oil for those essential fatty acids next week.
Very good. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Is there any final thoughts, anything you want to mention to our listening audience today before we hang up?
Yes, I think, fertility can have a financial, physical, and emotional burden on couples, but there is a lot that you can do, and it can be an empowering, hopeful, and positive process when you kind of get that good information that will work for you. So you're not alone if you don't feel like you're getting that from your conventional healthcare providers and you're needing to do your own research. I wish that wasn't the case, and my mission is to change that, but it is. So I do hope that what we're doing through FullWell will help with that.